Hi, I'm Paul Lamford, author of a number of books on games and gambling. In particular, the one we're going to deal with today on Blackjack in a best-selling book called The Amazing Book of Casino Games, which you can still get on the internet. And I'm going to explain to you the basics of Blackjack in a way that you'll feel confident to go into the casino. I won't make you into like Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man, winning millions of pounds, but I will let you play and expect to have a good chance of winning. Here we have a blackjack table from a casino, and you can see 7 boxes around the outside so that 7 people can play at a time. You may have seen in films many people playing at a blackjack table. Today we're just going to play with 1 player, which is also a way that they operate. Blackjack pays 3 to 2. Well, what is blackjack? Blackjack is a combination of an ace with a 10, jack, queen or king. So the 4 possible blackjacks are ace king, ace queen, ace jack, ace 10. They're all the same and they count as 21 because the ace counts as 11 and the 10s, jacks, queens and kings all count as 10. The other cards all count as their face value. So the 2 is a 2, the 3 is a 3, etc. up to the 9 is a 9. So it's a relatively simple game to work out what the point count of your hand is. The ace is a little bit unusual in that you can treat it as a 1 or an 11. So you have a choice and it's always treated as the one which is best in your favour. So that if you've got a 10 and an ace, then it's 21, not 11, because you count the ace as an 11. So blackjack is a game of where each player gets 2 cards to start with and the dealer gets 2 cards. Now it's a little unusual in that the dealer's card is, one of the 2 dealer's cards is face up and one is face down. So you're always guessing what the dealer has. So I will start off by just having 1 hand played by the house, which is the casino, against me, and just to see how the mechanics work. I'm going to deal for the dealer. We don't have an attractive dealer here, unfortunately, but we're going to deal the cards out. So I'm now got 2 cards, which I will look at. And what have I got? I've got 2 3s. So the aim of the game is to get a score as close to 21 as possible, but not more than 21. The dealer has specific rules about what the dealer must do. So we see here along this line, the dealer must draw to 16 and stand on all 17s. So if there's a 10 underneath there, the dealer will stand because she will have 18. If there's an 8 under there, she'll have 16 and she'll have to take a card. So draw means to take a card, stand means not to take a card. So that's explained these 2 ones. We have at the top here, moving these for a moment, blackjack pays 3 to 2. That's just to tell the player that when they get an ace or a 10, they will get 1.5 times their stake. So at the start of the game, the player places a stake. We'll say that the stake is 10 for this purpose. And so the player would then get 15 back in addition to the 10 if they got blackjack. Here, the last bit of information is insurance. This only applies when the dealer has an ace face up. And you can bet that the other card is a 10, jack, queen or king. And the insurance pays 2 to 1. So 2 to 1 means that you'll get twice back plus your stake. We'll see that in a little while when we have an ace with the dealer. At the moment, it doesn't apply because the dealer doesn't have an ace. But the first decision is for the player what to do with their hand. The aim of the game is, as I said, to get as close to 21 as possible. And the player decides to take another card here. He has 2 or 3 options. He could stand, which would be very poor play, because whatever card he gets, he's still going to be safe under 21. He could double down, which we'll come on to a bit later, where he increases his stake to 20. That would also be very poor play, because the most he could get would be 17 if he gets an ace. He could split into 2 hands of 3 and 3 and play, but he has to put stake on each one here, and then he plays 2 hands against the dealer like 2 separate players. And what he actually chooses to do is to hit. And the way that you do this in the casinos, you do something like this, or a scratching sound. And this is the one where you don't want any cards. So those 2 are pretty standard ones. The double down and the split, you can't do that, where you have to put an extra stake. And when you put the extra stake, the dealer knows that that's what it is. So the 4 actions that the player can have are to stand, to hit, to double down, or to split. And once you know that those 4 actions are the only things to do, you've probably learnt the very basics of blackjack to start off with. But let's see a little bit more, because it gets a bit more complicated. So the player decides that he wants another card, and the dealer gives the player another card. Now then, the player has 17, 6, and we said we can count the aces 11 or 1. So this is 7 or 17. And this is known as soft 17 because it could be counted as 7 or 17. So the dealer would stand, if the dealer had this hand, stand on all 17s. But the player does better to take another card. If he can get a 1, 2, ace, 2, 3 or 4, he will have a better hand. If he gets a 10, he'll have the same hand, and otherwise he'll have a worse hand. But let's see what he gets. He gets a 10. Right, so now this isn't such a good hand. It's probably underdog because the dealer might have 18, but the correct strategy, as we'll see later when we look at basic strategy, is to stand. And so we'll see what actually happens. And we still can't remove the stake until the end of the game. So that stake was placed as 10 at the start, and the dealer turns over the dealer's hand. The dealer's got 10, 12. The dealer keeps taking cards. Dealer must draw to 16. It should really say 16 or less and stand on all 17s or more, but they don't really have room to do that, and it's understood by all casino players. So the dealer still has to take another card on 12. Dealer got another ace, 13. The dealer keeps on taking cards, 20, so we've lost. So that was very unlucky. Well, the dealer was favourite, but we lost our £10 or 10 euros or 10 dollars or whatever the unit of currency we're playing for is. So we've seen the mechanics here where the player decided to stand. Had he taken a card, he would have got this 2 and he would have got 19. And had he taken another card, he'd have got the ace. But he can't see these cards. He has to guess what they're most likely to be. But that showed a game of blackjack, a hand of blackjack, and that really hopefully whetted your appetite for a bit more. We look at the same hand again, but with the player splitting this time. Okay, we just saw an example of a game of blackjack where the player decided to hit. We're going to look at an alternative now where the player decides to split. You may remember a few minutes ago the player had 3 and 3, and there's no reason to hide your cards, and in the casino they will generally not let you touch them because they're suspicious of people switching cards between 2 hands. So their cards will be face up and you will just not touch them. This is the situation when you split. You put a chip of 10 and the dealer will normally sort of separate them out to make sure that it's 2 hands and it's your hand and it's close to your box, which is where you put your original stake. And now the dealer will give you a card on this hand, and sometimes they let you finish this hand, and sometimes they give you a card on this hand. It varies from casino to casino. We'll keep it simple and we'll have the card at this stage. And now the first hand, usually the right hand, but again it can vary, is dealt with first, and the player now has on this hand 4 or 14, so soft 14 again. Okay, and the player decides to take a card on this one and hits, and now has 6 or 16. So that's not a very good hand, and it's pretty much always the case that up to 16 you will very likely to hit. Not always, but most of the time. and the player gets a card 3, 5, 6, 7, and now you can count one of the aces as an 11 and the other one as a 1. Counting both of them as an 11 would make this too many, more than 21. But counting this one, either of them as an 11, gives you 11, 13, 14, 17. Again, definitely right to take another card because, this is interesting, 7, 10, 12, 13, 14. So now we have to count the aces as 1 because if we counted them as 11, we'd have too many. So still going to take another card, unusually large number of cards on this hand. And now this card is bust because when it goes over 21, it's known as bust. So 3, 4, 6, 7, 14, 24 is more than 21. So that's bust and often turned over like that by the dealer. It varies. Sometimes they leave them there and they put it like this to show that it's bust. Sometimes turned over. Casinos vary in their behavior. This hand now has to be dealt with. The player should take a card on this one. So he hits, and that's much better. Now the player will stand because this is 19. So if we stop and think for a moment about this hand 19, if we take a card, if it's an ace or a 2, we will get a better hand. But if it's a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, all of those, worse hand. So overwhelmingly right to stand on this hand, just without really having much understanding of mathematics. So that's now the dealer now plays her hand. She has 10 and she gets 20. So we lost again. But there we are. I think if I showed you winning all the time, it would probably be a bit deceptive. So on these two occasions, you lost £20 or euros or whatever. We're now showing the double down bet, which is where you increase the stake to double the original stake because you think you're very likely to win. So we're going to have the 6 face up and the player's got 2 cards and he looks at the cards and he's got an 11. Again, we'll have the 10 original stake. Okay. That usually there's a table limit which will say the limit will be minimum bet might be €5 or £5, or sometimes €2 or £2. There's some more popular now, very low stake casinos which get a lot more beginners coming into the casino and prepared to have a go. And the maximum stake for what we call high rollers will be maybe £5,000 as a bet, or even higher in some the big casinos in Las Vegas, for example. But here we're going to have a stake of £10 and the player's got 11 and the dealer's got 6. So the object is to get as close to 21 as possible, but not more. Now you can't go over 21 with your next card here because if you get an ace, it'll be 12. If you get a 10, it'll be 21, and all the other cards will be some lower value. So we decided to double down, and we do that by placing an identical stake to the original stake next to it, and the dealer now knows that we're doubling down. The dealer knows that it's not a pair because we would move them to one side if they were the same card, and they're not the same card, so the only options to increase the stake are to double down. So the dealer gives me 1 card only, and that's very good. So we're very pleased with that. That has given us 21. We're very unlucky to lose now. We're probably about 90% to win, maybe 85% to win. And so that's the end of our play. We don't get any more cards. Once we've doubled down, we get a card, and it's usually put horizontally to say that's the end of the hand. And whatever the total is, it is. The dealer looks at her card. It's a 4, and she takes another card, a 5. Very poor hand. She has to take another card. Dealer must draw to 16 or less and stand on all 17s or more is the full rule, and the dealer goes bust. So whenever the dealer goes bust, the player wins, unless the player's gone bust, in which case the dealer would win. But here the player hasn't gone bust. The player has won 20, so we'll get paid 20. So we're back to level after our poor start. Now, having explained the standing, the hitting, the double down and the splitting. One other thing that we really need to explain is the insurance bet. I think I mentioned it a little earlier, and it only occurs when the dealer has an ace, which is in this case. So the dealer has an ace, and online there'll be a little announcement, insurance, question mark. At a casino, the dealer may well say, who wants insurance? We'd originally put a bet of £10 on. Bet always has to be put before you see any cards. So there I was a bit remiss in not putting it out quickly enough. But the 10 is the original stake. And if I want to bet on insurance, I have to put a bet of half my original stake to the right of or to the left, but to the right is more normal, of the original one. And that's a bet on insurance. And what is insurance? Insurance is a bet that the dealer has a 10 under here. So if the dealer has a 10 under here, I'm going to lose. My hand is 20. And the dealer, if the dealer has a 10 under here, I've lost. But I will win the insurance bet. So let's see how that works out. So now the dealer looks at her card. She looks at it without letting us see what it is. And online it'll usually show the corner peeking, turning up to show that she's actually looked at it. And if she hasn't got a blackjack, the play will carry on and I will have to make a decision. If the dealer has a blackjack, she turns over the card and shows the blackjack and then collects from other people at the table whether they've won or lost. The best that they can do is to win an insurance bet. They all lose their stake because the dealer has blackjack, unless they also have blackjack when they would have a tie. We'll show another hand in a minute with a push, which is the term for a tie. But here the dealer wins the £10 for the original bet, but pays £10 back because the insurance pays 2 to 1. I have to put a bet of 5 on insurance. I get paid at 2 to 1, which is 10, and I've broken even by having my insurance bet. Generally speaking, the insurance is a poor bet because it pays at 2 to 1, but its correct odds, I think, are about 2.3 to 1. So it's not, like the casino wants to win, so that's why they don't give you the fair odds, really, unfortunately. But there are occasions when there are a lot of 10s remaining in here that it's a good bet, but rarely. One other hand to show one other result. So the dealer has a 7 and we have 12. Usually the cards are dealt face up for the player. In a friendly game they may be dealt face down, but in a casino they're dealt face up because the player is not allowed to touch the cards. And now the player decides to hit this hand because 12 is not a very good total. And the player gets a 5. So the player thinks, I've got 17. If there's a 10 under there, which is the most common card, that'll be the same. And if the dealer's got an ace, it'll be more. But if the dealer's got less than a 10, it'll be not as good as us, and the dealer will have to hit a card and may bust. So I decide to stand, and I just wave like this, and the dealer turns over her card, and she's got the same as me, 17. So we both got 17, and this is what's called a push. And the bet is returned without any discount, without any commission or anything of that sort. And so the bet just comes back to the player, and the player broke even on that hand. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed the sort of basics of blackjack. We've only really scratched the surface and haven't given you any strategy particularly. The basic aim of the game is to get as close to 21 as possible, but you have to really learn the basic strategy, which will be the subject of our next podcast. Thank you very much.